truth be told, 2 years on, after the Madani government took over, I give this government a score of 6 out of 10. Personal score. 6:30 government. Nothing special, nothing to wow about. There are some things that's done. It was definitely better than the previous government. This is for sure. But far from what we expect. So to me, it's not a great government. 6:30 government, very mediocre government. So it's not something that I'll be jumping out of my seat to vote come next election. The Prime Minister pun sub-performance. I just find it, disappointing. Banyak sangat disappointment. He does become some good things, but banyak sangat disappointment. Okay.
I would love to be able to talk about something substantive in terms of policies or initiatives of the Anwar Ibrahim government in Malaysia, but there's just nothing really to critique. I mean, Anwar was waiting for decades to become the Prime Minister of Malaysia, and then after winning the seat, Malaysia is still waiting for him to become a Prime Minister. Meanwhile, the problems are not waiting. The ringgit is steadily drifting downwards. It was around 4.4 ringgits to the dollar when Anwar was elected, and it's now closer to 4.7. Where's it going to go? 4.8, 4.9, 5 ringgits to the dollar? That'll be devastating. And nothing is really being done about it. Now, Bank Negara raised interest rates, which means that people are paying on their loans and mortgages at a rate considerably higher than the national rate of inflation. Anwar wants to cut subsidies on the T20 income group, the higher income group, on everything from poultry to electricity, and he says that this will not negatively impact lower income Malaysians, but of course that's not how economies work. If you raise costs for one segment of the economy, one segment of the population, that segment of the population that has the most disposable income, if you raise costs for them, then they're going to cut their expenses, they're going to cut their expenditures, which will then have a ripple effect through the entire economy in terms of prices, in terms of production, in terms of demand and consumption across the whole economy. And of course, many of these people in the T20 are themselves business owners. So when they either cut their expenses or raise their prices to compensate for the higher costs that they're grappling with, obviously that's going to affect everyone in the economy, including low-income, mostly low-income Malaysians. The government just doesn't look like it has any economic plan, frankly. I mean, they keep sort of falling back on IMF recommendations, the general IMF structural adjustment program, like with the cutting of subsidies. And of course, if they follow through, if they proceed on that path, it's going to be devastating for the Malaysian economy. I mean, when he was elected, Anwar had a manifesto. He came in with a manifesto. In fact, the combined manifestos of Pakatan Harapan and BN. But now nobody seems to be adhering to either one of those manifestos. I mean, think about it. If there had been a hung election last year and no government was formed and Malaysia had operated for the last 7 months without a government, I don't really see how anything would have been different. It's like the government is absent, as it is. And Anwar insisted on naming himself as the finance minister. So it's not like he can blame anyone else for failing to act on the economy. I mean, he's both Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. So the state of the economy is pretty much entirely his responsibility. I mean, when he was elected, Anwar asked civil servants to give him ideas about what to do to rescue the economy, and he gave them 2 weeks. It's been 7 months, and still no ideas have emerged. Now he's even asking journalists, or saying that journalists are also responsible for giving him ideas about governance. So, predictably, the opposition is likely to sweep upcoming state elections, which Anwar says signals political instability in Malaysia, which is causing hesitancy by foreign investors, that they don't feel confident in Malaysia because there's political instability and therefore they're not investing in the country. But I mean, Both of these problems would have been solved or could be solved if you had a plan for the economy. Because if you have a plan and you can show foreign investors that you know what you're doing and you're managing the economy, then not only would they have confidence in you, but the opposition wouldn't have anything to use against you. So you wouldn't be looking at likely losses in the state elections if you were managing the economy well. And FDI would be flowing in because everyone would see that you're managing the economy well. So either way, it comes down to the problem, both the problem of facing losses in the upcoming state elections and the problem of foreign investors not having confidence in Malaysia. Both of these come down to the fact that Anwar just looks bewildered by the challenges of running a country. And instead of managing the economy or coming up with a plan and actually governing properly, he's busied himself with vendettas against political rivals, posturing, posing, photo ops, speeches, and pretending to call Erdogan on the phone to boost his image as a world leader. Or else he's preaching about ethnic and religious hatred as if he lives in some Malaysia in a parallel universe that is being riven by racial hatred and strife and violence, which of course isn't happening. None of this is helping. None of this is addressing the real problems that Malaysia is facing. People need to pay their mortgages. They need to pay their rent. They need to pay their bills. They need to be able to buy groceries. They need to be able to service their debts without going bankrupt. And they need their salaries to stop being worth less with each passing day. Malaysia needs guaranteed food security. I mean, there are real practical problems that people are facing, and rhetoric about, culture war type issues is not going to solve them. I really think that if Anwar had been from a younger generation, he would have, instead of getting into politics, he would have and should have, pursued a career as a pundit of some kind, a YouTuber or a blogger or something like that, where you can just talk abstractly your criticisms of the government or, your big ideas about how things should be, without actually having to bear any of the responsibility of making it happen on the ground. Because talking is really more his forte. I mean, for decades, Anwar Ibrahim was held up as this leader with great potential who was never given a chance to prove himself. Well, now he's been given that chance, and he is really as inactive as if he had never been elected to office. I mean, he goes on and on about fighting corruption, and surely corruption is an important issue, but ultimately, Malaysians are going to have to start asking themselves, what is more damaging for a country, corruption or incompetence? I mean, honestly, at least corrupt politicians have to be active. They have to come up with initiatives and policies and programs and projects that they can use to enrich themselves. And there's a trickle-down effect where there's some benefit for the population while they're running projects and programs and policies that they can collect graft from. There's still something going. At least there's something moving. There's some action. There's some activity. And some trickle-down benefit for the population. An incompetent politician just sort of sits there, immobile, as the problems just pile up all around them, which is what it looks like is happening with this government. I mean, I don't know, maybe Anwar's potential was eroded over the years due to being sidelined for all that time. I really don't know. Maybe at some point in his life, earlier on, he really did have that potential, and he could have been a great leader back in those days, and he could have really been everything that he has been hyped up to be. But at this moment, it looks like he was elected and he won the seat of Prime Minister with an empty gas tank. His tank is empty at this point. I mean, he had the will for a long time to persevere until he could become the Prime Minister. And now that he has become the Prime Minister, it just doesn't look like he really has the will to be Prime Minister.
Okay, now take a look at the alternative. Alternative is opposition. The promise to go to heaven, the things, even smaller people. The opposition is deplorable. No matter how bad we think the government is, we have an even worse opposition. There's not a reason to rejoice tau rakyat Malaysia. Because opposition pun dapat duit pada taxpayers money. Rakyat, sebahagian rakyat pun sokong opposition. We pay for them. Opposition ada role. Opposition is not just there to take over the government. Bukan. Opposition is to challenge, to raise important issues, to keep the government in check, to contribute, to work together with the government, but having alternative views. And therefore, hopefully, we prevail in our decisions about the nation's progress, way forward. Tapi opposition punya quality, itu tanya the voters lah that voted them kan. So opposition is even more deplorable. I've never seen a worse opposition than we have now. Government is the best that we have so far lah, tapi still underperformed. I'm just disappointed gila. So sekarang ni under this circumstance, elections yang this government tak patut menang pun, they may most probably menang lah, because opposition teruk sangat. Ada chance je sakau. And then apa ni, hypocrite semua. So to me, this is my rumusan lah. Kita punya opposition is so bad, teruk sangat barisan opposition kita, that Madani government doesn't deserve this kind of opposition. They have it good. Dia tak buat kerja pun. Opposition bukan question dia buat kerja tak buat kerja. Opposition question the personal life of the Madani government punya MPs. So senang, they just deflect, they use police, they senyapkan, tapi the main issues are not discussed. Jadi to me, the opposition to me is heaven sent to the Madani government. If I'm the Madani government, I'm so happy with this opposition. I tell you, this is dream come true. With this opposition, I will remain in power almost endlessly. With this kind of opposition, tak viable langsung to form government. So in the meanwhile, this government start slacking lah. Buat apa dia suka, tak buat apa yang dia patut buat, do all kinds of nonsense. So at the end of the day, who are the suckers? We rakyat are the suckers. Tak? So to me, the way forward, if people see what is wrong, and if the opposition is hopeless, sekarang ni the best opposition in the country are the netizens. People who write, people who do cartoons, who do shows, who do videos, who do voice notes, who do interviews, speeches. Rakyat, these are the best opposition. They raise pertinent issues. They hammer the government, and the government follow whatever rakyat bising. Now, apa jadi kat wakil rakyat? Wakil rakyat ineffektif. Rakyat lagi efektif through the multimedia. Jadi, among the rakyat, what I want to say is that there are so many capable leaders. So many capable leaders, and come next election, we may not be able to sweep the government, Madani government off. Tapi yang penting is for there to be a viable, solid third force. And third force, with all due respect, cannot be gerak independent. Satu-satu, then you're just a fly to be swatted. Takkan survive the election machinery. Maknanya you form parties, you form alliances. You may even take people from the current opposition punya MP, bukan semua teruk. The current Madani government punya MP bukan semua teruk, who's not happy with what's happening. Now, they can even lead also, tak apa. Tapi point is, have a strong, viable third force. This third force may not be able to sweep and take government next GE, but at least you form a strong opposition front. Start with that first. That is the first step. We need to have a strong force, because at least we repair something. We may not be able to replace the government, but we can replace the opposition. Ganti opposition yang berkualiti, ganti opposition yang viable to become government come next GE. And when they argue things in court, when they raise issues, rakyat will see, and they will begin to show their potential to be better than government. It will also keep the Madani government in check. Madani government either pull up their sock or get booted out. Okay? Shape up or ship out. Simple. because now there will be a viable punya opposition in the form of third force. Yang sub performance punya tu, yang deplorable opposition semua, hopefully tak get elected dah. They should not even be in parliament, become menyemak saja. So now if we have a strong opposition pun, even tak jadi government pun, opposition, solid people, people who are talented, people who have leadership, people who are genuinely interested to build a better Malaysia, Madi government can be in check. Kalau next GE pun kalah, the following GE, kalau Madani tak pull up their socks, they are out. That third force becomes the government. And therefore from there, the rakyat, we the rakyat can begin to reform, can do whatever needs to be done. We stay true to the article, to the constitution. Jangan lari pada that. Stay for that. But there's so many other things outside whatever that's fixed, that we can reform. We need to reform that way. We got to maintain the Malay support, the Chinese support, the Indian support, Sabah Sarawak punya support. Sekarang ni Sabah Sarawak tak mau duduk pun dengan Malaysia. That is so deplorable. Opposition can't do jack shit. Government pun tak apa-apa buat. So at the end of the day, everybody is disappointed. So kalau disappointed, rather than choosing between something yang busuk dengan something yang kotor, dua-dua macam tu, for what? Find a third force, get a third force, form a third force, step up siapa-siapa leaders yang ada berkemampuan, yang ada cita-cita in politics. Jangan be ideal sangat, tapi be strategic, be astute, and form allegiance. You must be united. You must have a group, a strong group, bukan seorang-seorang solo jadi hero Hindustan. You do this, you form a formidable, united third force, sizable enough. Even kau tak sampai 112 punya seat boleh menang pun, you win sufficiently, you are a strong opposition. Memang the government will be on their heels. Memang in check. Issues tak payah serang peribadi semua. Issue attack on how they are managing the government. This is how opposition should be. We repair the opposition, then automatically as GEs come, the government will be repaired. Kalau boleh repair. Kalau tak boleh, they will be replaced. So if people get this, this vibe, it resonates with people thinking. If you see the logic in this, then we should all know what we should do.
That's all for this video. Thank you for watching this video. We sincerely appreciate you joining us today. If our content resonated with you or sparked inspiration, please consider expressing your support by liking it and subscribing to stay connected with our community. Your support holds immense value for us.